Right. Let me tell it, I've got it. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us today for what I am told is our 31st installment of the EO Exchange series. The topic today is establishing a business report card. Troy Shantz and Eric Patrick, with our excellent strategic alliance partner, now CFO, are going to share weekly practices to measure your business and processes to efficiently gather data. So we've time set aside for Q&A. So please put questions in the chat and we will get to those after they finish the presentation. A little bit about our now CFO presenters this morning. Troy Shantz works in business development for the Nashville market with more than 20 years of experience in public accounting and served as the tax and business development partner with the second oldest local firm in Nashville. In his role, he worked closely with business owners and their trusted advisors to implement planning and strategies for their long-term success. He has served on numerous local boards, including roles as treasurer and president, graduating magna cum laude from Auburn University. He is the proud father to 3 wonderful children. Eric Patrick joined now CFO in 2017 as a partner in the Nashville and Knoxville offices. He has worked as a leader, manager, and CFO for a wide variety of industries, including manufacturing, technology, nonprofit, and farming. Prior to joining now CFO, Eric was a CFO for a manufacturing company in Tennessee, where he helped grow revenue by 50% and income by 30% over a 3-year period through facilitating organic growth and acquisitions. Eric attended Rhodes College, graduating with a Bachelor and Master of Science degrees in accounting. He maintains an active CPA license. So Tony, Troy, and Eric, thanks for doing this, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
All right, thanks a lot, David. I'll just kind of jump right in. Thanks for the intro. Boy, we should have shortened that intro a little bit. We gave you a lot to read there. That was great. Well, I was going to talk about myself, but I think we kind of covered all of this. This is a great picture from 10 years ago, so obviously I've got a lot more gray going on now. I don't know why I keep using this thing, but started my career with International Paper, Dell Computers. So spent 10 years with big companies that had good report cards. Not always every part of their business, but the parts of the businesses that have been around for a while, they really had this part of the business dialed in: how to measure, how to hold people accountable, what to measure, how to get the data. So early in my career, I learned a lot about that. And I did a career pivot after about 10 years in corporate accounting, started an organic farm, did that for 6 years. So I've got experience with startups, managing money, managing employees, trying to figure out how to get the most out of all my workers. And then I sold the farm after I did it for about 8 years to a younger couple with stronger backs, and then got back into the controller CFO world. So Energy Logic, Rob Stevens was a member of EO, and I was his CFO for a few years before he sold the company. So helped him with some report cards and mining data. So just to give you guys an idea of, I've been doing report cards and developing them and figuring out the best way to present them for a while. So I don't really have like a 10-step program, do this. I'm really going to share kind of the lessons I've learned, what works well, what doesn't work well, what's the best way to approach this, and what's the best way to use data and dashboards and report cards to help manage your business. So yeah, what the heck am I talking about? What's a business report card? Business scorecard, balance scorecard, KPIs, dashboards. They're all kind of synonymous, same types of things used in the same ways. I've almost got a Webster's dictionary definition here: a collection of performance metrics used to identify, improve, and control a business's various functions. I think the key word in there is a collection. A lot of folks think about a business report card or a dashboard, and it's got to be one page that has everything. You manage your whole business from that. That's not really the way it works in reality. It ends up, you may have one of those, you may have 6 of those that you use differently with different parts of your organization. You may have different parts of your organization that have their own dashboard. You may not be sophisticated enough to have a dashboard. You may just have numbers in an Excel spreadsheet. And so that collection can come from everywhere. And in the end, I'm going to kind of go through the dashboards and metrics I use to measure my practice here in Tennessee, just to give you an example. And, I'm the one kind of teaching the class on it, but half of my dashboards, report cards are Excel spreadsheets. So it doesn't have to be high tech and pretty. And it's not all just about financial numbers. There's all kinds of other drivers and data that's going to help you help increase your bottom line and help you get your business to where it needs to be. So we're not just talking about financial numbers. So here's an example. When I work with International Paper, they tasked me with coming up for I worked at a big paper mill, and we made our own power. So my first job was the accountant for the power plant. And the manager wanted a dashboard. And this is probably what he thought my dashboard looked like. I was fresh out of school, and I could work Excel and make some pretty graphs that didn't mean anything. So we've probably all, if we've gone down this path to try to develop this, come up with some things that are very pretty, but are useless. So I thought this was a good comic to throw out there. I'll talk a little bit about why we do this. One of the number one reasons is just visibility in your business. I talk about financial visibility a lot whenever I'm talking with clients and folks. And I love this Warren Buffett quote: in business, the rear view is always clearer than the windshield. And I've had some clients tell me, well, even my rear view is pretty fuzzy. But I guarantee you, if you've got a fuzzy rear view, your windshield is probably just completely opaque and black, and you can't see through it. So that's one of the reasons to start down this path. Like, we want to be able to look forward in our business. We want to see what's coming. We want some insight into how the business is going to be. So a lot of this is a journey to figure out what metrics and what things we need to be looking at on a daily or weekly basis to be able to see into the future. And it's not always hey, this is my business, and I can say, well, here's the 5 things you need to measure. It's going to be different, and it's going to be a journey. Like, if you're a startup, restaurant, those first 5 metrics you use are going to be entirely different from the metrics that you're looking 10 years down the road when you have 3 different restaurants in a restaurant group. So they're all going to change. Another point in this slide I always like to make is, if your rear view is not clear, that's where you start. That's on your business report card. If you can't look back, if you're not getting timely and accurate financials after the end of the month, it's going to be really hard to figure out how to look forward. So that's always step 1 in this process. Just continued on why have a business report card. Another good reason to do this is accountability for your organization. You can get a lot of insight from more data into your business, but you can also, if you're measuring the right things, you can hold your organization accountable. And what I mean by that is, employees can own their own scorecards, or managers, your marketing manager or your operations manager, they may have their own scorecard. If you're looking at it weekly, and they know that they're going to have to look at it weekly, they know on Friday, hey, we're going to have to look at this scorecard, and this is what I'm being measured against, then those metrics are going to stay on their mind all week long. They may get caught up in putting out fires in the day-to-day and the running of the business, but if they know there's going to be a time during the week where they're going to have to sit down and look at these numbers, they'll be in the back of their mind all week long. And if you can get on a cadence, you can really help to use these dashboards or business report card to hold your folks accountable. And we do that in our organization. I'd like to think we do it pretty well. And I'll talk kind of about how we use these to hold our folks accountable. And the other thing, if you have your employee owning the metrics, they can help determine what's really driving it. If you're measuring the wrong thing, and that employee has to explain each week why the number's going up or down, they're going to help you figure out, hey, this isn't the best indication of what I'm doing. My number went down, but I really did something else to add to the business. We need to be measuring that too. So don't just make it something that the CEO or the business owner is looking at. Involve the whole team. So before we get into kind of how you put this together, here was another illustration that I thought was great. Be careful. There's a lot of metrics, a lot of KPIs on this dashboard. And I love the middle slide there. What's the one in the bottom right corner trending to 0, and that measures how well we all understand them. So over time, you should understand these more. Be careful you don't fall into the trap of just having 50 different things you're measuring all at once, and nobody really knows what's important or what they mean. So how do you figure out what to measure? I mean, the best advice I can give is just start. I find most entrepreneurs, most business owners have a lot of insight into what they should be measuring. They're very intuitive about their business. You're already tracking some things. You may just be tracking it when you have time, or you may just be tracking it when cash gets short and you're wondering what happened. So start with what you're currently measuring, and get into the habit of measuring it on a weekly or a daily or a consistent basis. Think about what do you wish you knew? What's broke in the organization? What are you having trouble with? If it's accounts receivable or revenue or operation, start there and then figure out kind of what can I measure? What's driving this part of my business? What metric could, if I focused on and increased, would fix the problem I'm having right now? The hardest thing is to figure out what's the right KPI. The best advice I can give is give it a try. You can Google it, and the next page I've got examples for different types of companies of the top 3 KPIs. Do a Google for your industry. If you're in the restaurant business, if you're in the security business, Google Google dashboards. You can get some good examples out there. Start getting some ideas. Reach out to your peers. If you know folks that are in the same industry, if there's an industry group you participate in, ask them what they're measuring. That's a great place to start and try it out. I've listed 4 categories. A lot of the things that people are measuring are going to fall into these 4 categories. If you're producing anything or selling a service, the volume is obviously something, whether it's hours or widgets, time it takes to produce, downtime on machines, utilization of your employees, all kinds of things related to time that'd be great to measure. Activity, this is great for sales folks. How many people are they meeting with? How many meetings are they having? And then cost, that's usually the most obvious one, whether it's cost per department or cost of production or gross margin, all types of metrics that are related to cost. And some are kind of a combination of both, cost per volume. At Dell, we would measure how many boxes we would send out. So if you remember, Dell you could go online and you would build your own computer. That was how Dell got started. So the box that was going out was different for everything. And that was the number one measurement we measured in our plant, was cost per box. How much did each one of those boxes take out? We were looking at that on a weekly basis. And again, it's a process. You start measuring something, you start having a weekly or daily review with your team, and it's going to lead to a lot more questions. And those questions are going to get you either into more detail that you can measure, or if you're measuring the wrong thing, those questions will help you decide, what you need to be measuring. So like I mentioned, here's some examples. I'm not going to read through any of these, but to be honest, I got most of these just by Googling things. I've never done marketing in healthcare businesses, so wasn't really sure what they would measure. I've been in manufacturing, but you can really get some good ideas out there by looking at Google. Another question around this: do I need a big, high cost, sexy, high tech dashboard system, Power BI type intelligence tool to do this? And my answer is no. I mean, my organization is going to be 4 to 5 million this year. We're part of a larger organization that uses a business intelligence tool. I use that for about half of my dashboards and half of my business report cards and metrics. And the other half, I'm using spreadsheets. If you're a small company, there's nothing wrong with using Excel. I mean, chances are you're already paying for it. Chances are you've got somebody in your organization that knows how to use it. And if you can get you can download data from a lot of different systems into Excel and create some really high value add information, metrics, and scorecards. So if you're just getting off the ground, that's a great place to start. The next step would be kind of canned reports that are coming out of existing systems you use. So if you have a point of sale system, if you're a restaurant, they've got great point of sale systems with good data that comes out of there. Sometimes the canned reports are great. Sometimes you need to change them a little. Sometimes you may have to talk with the provider for that system and say, hey, I need my own customized report out of here. It's got 3 pieces of data that I want, but I also want a couple more. Can you help me build that out? That's kind of the next tier, lower cost way to get the information you need. And then that last bullet point on there, business intelligence tools, Microsoft Power BI, that's what we use at Now CFO. That's a good tool. What they do is, if you get up to, 20 million in revenue, you may have 5 different systems that all the data in your organizations are coming from. You've got an accounting system, maybe a different payroll system, maybe a point of sale system, maybe a Salesforce or a CRM system, and all of this information is coming from different places. What a business intelligence tool can do is it goes out there and reads all of these databases, gets the data all in one central place, and then you can create dashboards that pull from all of these different systems. And what that allows you to do is not have to get an ERP system like an SAP or some of these really expensive systems, or a NetSuite, some of these expensive systems that are out there that claim to have all of this information in one place. A business intelligence tool is a really good way to avoid that cost, to utilize the system that your organization knows well, to not have to make changes to every department, but to be able to get data all in one place. And I'll show some examples of how we use that to run our organization. I mentioned cost versus benefit a little bit on that last slide. The key takeaway here is all data has a cost. So always be aware of that. I mean, as a business owner, as a manager, sometimes it's easy to say, hey, go out and get me this information. I need this piece of data. Be aware, sometimes that's somebody going out and spending 30 minutes tracking some data down, and sometimes it's somebody going and changing processes, and it's going to be a month to change a lot of things to get that data. So be aware of the cost, and try to think about ahead of time if you really need to go down that rabbit hole to get that piece of information. A lot of times you spend a lot of money getting some data and you learn, hey, that data is not useful, but usually it takes you to another step of, okay, that wasn't useful, but now I see I need to be looking at this. But just always keep that in the back of your mind. And then on the flip side, and it's easy to do when you're just getting started or you're a smaller organization, don't underestimate the value of data. If you have to spend 30 grand and over a course of a year, it's going to generate another 100 grand in net income, that was money well spent. I'll take that ROI any day. So data can be very valuable. Don't shirk at the cost of some of it, but you do have to weigh the cost versus benefit. Execution, what's the best way to make it work? And I mentioned this before, just start. You're gonna learn what to measure as you go. Start with what you know. Pick 3 other metrics to add. Don't, like that illustration I showed earlier, don't pick 50 and try to look at all of them at once. Just use your intuition. Start with that, and set up a review meeting. This next slide is going to talk about it a little bit more, but that's the biggest mistake I see is you come up with a metric, you measure it for a few weeks, and then you quit. You've got to have a cadence to it. And a lot of times a CFO or a controller's main job is just making sure the organization is sitting down to look at this data. It doesn't have to be for 3 hours a week, It may just be a 30-minute meeting, but let's make sure each week we sit down and look at it. And then part of that meeting is to assess, hey, is this the right stuff to look at? You know, I would say use 90% of that meeting to go over the numbers, to figure out what's driving and what's happening, where the organization's heading, and use the last 10% of that meeting to talk about, hey, is there anything else we need to be looking at? Is there something we can tweak here? Is this being measured right? And then it will evolve over time. But the best advice is to get started. And make sure you include, if you start measuring things on a weekly basis, make sure you're including those in your monthly financial review. That'll be one of the best ways to determine, hey, we started measuring this, we're moving the needle on this metric, this number. Is it really affecting the bottom line? So that way you've got that monthly touch point of comparing, you know, what you're doing to drive these metrics with how they're affecting, you know, both the top line and the bottom line. And I've already talked about this, you know, always have the review meeting. You know, in EO, we talk a lot about, you know, working on the business versus working in the business. This is where you work on the business, is making sure you set the time aside. And it may not just be one meeting with a certain, you know, with your management team. It may be 3 different meetings during the week, one with your management lead team, one with your sales organization, and one, you know, with your operations team. And you may be measuring different things in each one, but that cadence is the thing that I see as the number one point of failure for instituting this and moving the business forward. And that's the classic entrepreneur, you know, problem you run into is you get caught up with running the business and you don't take the time to step outside it. One other point on here, it doesn't have to be the business owner or the CEO. A lot of times you're not the best person to make sure these things happen. You get pulled in a million different directions. You have a manager or somebody else that you can put in charge of this meeting. I had my staff meeting this morning and I hopped out of it about 20 minutes early so I could prepare for this presentation. So I've got somebody that runs that meeting for me that allows me to be able to do that, but still is able to hold everybody else accountable. Before I get into scorecard examples, David, maybe I'll pause, and if there's any questions out there, I'm happy to answer those. But the next few slides I'm going to go through are kind of how I measure my organization. And then I've got some other examples out there we can look at if we have time.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you for the best examples you've seen, but that's where you're headed. So let's proceed.
Okay. Yep. I've done a lot of talking. Let's look at some real stuff. And so I know not all of your businesses, you know, fit into a service-based business. So I'm not going to spend a lot of detail in what we do, but I just kind of wanted to show these as examples. So this is out of Power BI. This, like I said, this is what now CFO uses. We're going to be probably a $70 million company this year. Our individual markets range from 2 million to 10 million. So at a corporate level, we're able to afford this and have the resources to put it together. But just to give you an example of kind of the size of business we are. This is NAM, which is Now CFO Activity Metrics. This is how we measure our sales folks, and Troy can tell you all about this. We measure their activity. I mean, if they meet with a networking partner, if they meet with a potential client, if they go to a networking event, if they make a sales call, they all have different points, and we have quotas that they have to hit on a weekly basis. For these things. It's kind of a complex system, but once we have somebody working in business development for us for a while, they learn how to do it. The points are weighted so that they get more points for more higher value activities. Sales meetings are worth more than having a one-on-one meeting with one of our referral partners. But this is a great way over time for me to measure, you know, the activity of our sales folks. And that's one of the hardest things to measure, right? Is the activity of your salespeople, especially if you have a long sales cycle, or you don't have a lot of deals that close in a month. You want to make sure they're out there doing the right thing. So the top part of this measures the amount of deals that they've closed in a month, and then kind of the bottom left, the NAM breakdown. And I had this selected for like a month period. I look at this on a weekly basis to see what kind of activity my sales folks had last week. And this is an Excel-based spreadsheet that I also use. So this prior one, this is coming out of the highest level, pretty high-tech Power BI business intelligence tool. And then this one is just as equally important to me. Whenever I have new folks joining my sales team, we've got a budget line in here for these things, and we've got an actual line. And then this top left one, whenever they start, they're not going to be closing deals for probably 6 months. So I want to make sure, I want to know what their activity is with networking events, have a budget, and we review this Monday morning with every new person in my business development team. Are you ramping the way you're supposed to? You need to be having this many meetings a week. And if they're not having them, they need to come in with a good explanation as to why. And then that top right one is our NAM, that activity measurement I talked about. And we have a set ramp quota for them as well. So this is a very powerful tool for me to set expectations and to hold my business development folks accountable whenever they're first getting going with this. But again, this is an Excel spreadsheet that one of my business development managers takes them all 5 minutes to put together, but it's a pretty powerful tool to help me get folks started. The other side of my business, so I have W-2 employees that are salaried for me, and we hire them out on an hourly basis for contract controller, CFO work. So their utilization, which is measured of how many billable hours did they have over 40 hours in the week, that's my operation measurement. So I look at this every weekend, and this adjusted utilization number on the left, that's 91%. My goal is to have 95, so I didn't hit it. And then the top shows my utilization by day, and this is being pulled out of our billing software. So I can easily look, and I've blacked out the names of my folks there on the left. It usually has the name of my consultants. And I have one that was at 50%. She was dealing with some medical issues, and then I have another guy at 58%, and he had a project roll off. So a lot of times this will, and if you notice, there's a lot more yellow on a Friday. So I've always got that issue of consultants like to check out a little bit early on Friday afternoon, especially if they've hit their 40 billable hours. So really valuable tool for me. I use this when I have one-on-ones with consultants to talk about what their utilization has been. I use this to help me let them know, hey, your salary increases, your bonuses are going to be directly tied to your utilization number. Some of it's out of their control, but a lot of it's not.
Hey, Eric, why didn't you black out the sales one before that?
Oh, sorry. I'll do that.
All right, just a little point of levity, real quick.
Yeah, no, that's good. AR, you don't think of a financial report as kind of a business report card, but every business needs to be looking at accounts receivable weekly. And again, I blacked out my client numbers here. Obviously on this one, I've got an issue with one client that's got a lot of money out there for me. They're waiting on an investment partner to put some funds back in the business. So I look at this every week. This helps me know when to stop work. If I was only looking at this, at a monthly basis, I would probably have a couple more bills out there for that company before we stopped working for them. So a lot more risk out there, a lot more liability on my side. This needs to be a part of some weekly review. And take it with a grain of salt. It's coming from an accounting guy, but this is something, if it gets out of control, you're going to be in a cash crunch. So it needs to be part of your weekly measurement, whether it's with your AR team or your CFO. We include our sales team with this. Our sales folks don't get commissions unless we collect revenue, so we leverage them to help. But I would, above almost anything else on a weekly basis, I would make sure you're looking at AR in your business. This is where it starts to get busy, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm an accountant. Again, I've got my consultants blacked out, but the way I look forward through my windshield of my business is I have each one of my consultants forecast out their hours for the next 5 weeks. And this is the spreadsheet where they do that. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details, but this is how I hold them accountable. We had our staff meeting this morning. They have to have this updated. They have to talk about what they build last week, what they're going to build next week, and any changes to their forecast. And they know this is going to happen every week. I never cancel that one. That's why I've got somebody else that runs that meeting for me. They have to know that they're gonna not only report it and be held accountable to me, but they're also on there with the rest of their team members as well. So that's another very powerful way to help keep your folks accountable. If you've got good metrics, include your whole team. Make sure they see what everybody else is doing. We do the same thing with our business development team across the whole company. We have a company-wide, nationwide call where we have all of our business development folks on there, and they're reporting their sales for the month and their NAM, their activity measurements. So that can be very powerful. If you're constantly coming in low compared to your peers, that can really drive behaviors. And that leads into, this looks like a monthly financial report, and it's revenue, and I've blocked out kind of my numbers on there, and it's a little bit busy. And you want to be careful you don't get things too busy, but this is something that we look at on a weekly basis. So it can be busy if it's something you look at all the time. And we look at this all the time. The yellow bar is the most important one. I use that last spreadsheet that I had that everybody forecast their revenue on to forecast my revenue, what my revenue is going to be for the month. And this is really helpful to the whole team, both my consultants and my business development, and to me, to know if it looks like we're going to meet budget. And this is pretty accurate. As early as the first week of the month, I have a pretty good idea where my revenue is going to land for the month. So I can, if I just waited to the end of the month and to look at this number, and it was, and I'm 80% of budget, there's nothing I can do in the month at that point. But if I look at it during the first week of the month and it looks low, I've got a lot of time to help fix that problem. So this is just kind of an example of how we look forward in our organization. And this is the last one I'll show. I've got some other examples of different types of businesses on there. This is another, especially for small businesses that have to manage cash, a cash flow forecast. I recommend a 13-week bi-week cash flow forecast. You need to have somebody in your organization that can put this together. At the top, so this is for a nonprofit organization, and I pulled numbers from a few years back just so nobody could kind of tell who this was. And this was a client of ours. We would prepare this weekly. It would show what money's coming in from donors. It's got their cash going out, shows when payroll, rent, and then our check was a big check for them. And they also had some other miscellaneous costs. But the beauty of this, at the end of it, it will show what's going to be in the bank balance for the next 13 weeks. In this, and they also had a couple of credit cards and a line of credit. So we'd have a good idea of, hey, 4 or 5 weeks out, we've got 60 grand in the bank. We can probably afford to pay down a couple of these credit cards then, especially when the lowest balance we're going to see is 18 grand over the next 13 weeks. So this is something that an accountant can prepare weekly. Usually takes a day or two to get this model set up, get processes in place, but can take an hour, depending on the size of the organization, an hour to update each week. And I don't think I have to explain, how powerful a tool this could be to a small business to help you manage cash. If this were a for-profit business that didn't have credit cards and you were thinking about hiring somebody, you could look out there, hey, our cash is growing, until we get out into September. And when that next thing comes in, we're at 70. So we're in a good, we've got cash. Maybe we can hire that new, if it's an operations person or a salesperson. And if these numbers are negative out here in 10 weeks, boy, you really want to know about them now. That's the clear windshield I'm talking about. If you've got 10 weeks to figure out how to solve that problem, that's a lot better than just rolling in the week before and having your accountant say, hey, we're running out of money. So this is another, should be another part of a report card or its own report card that you're managing to. So yeah, I mean, there's one more. I love this one. A lot of times, if you ask somebody in your organization, hey, we need a report card, this is going to be how they come up with it. So try to put some thought into it. But yeah, David, that's kind of everything I've got. I'd love to answer questions. Yeah.
Good stuff, Eric. We do have questions. Let's see. First one was Brittany Lorenzi asked, what's the best place to find industry benchmarks once you identify your KPIs for your organization?
Oh, that's a good question. And that's one of the hardest things. If you're a part of an organization inside your industry, and here's something, I was going to share the name of the company, but I won't. Something that I've seen companies do, like there are some industries that are massive, like lawn care or pest control, or those are, you're going to be able to join some kind of industry organization and you can probably get those metrics, or you can go to a conference and you have a lot of peers you could talk to and ask what their metrics are. But there are some businesses, either they're new or maybe there's only six other businesses that do what you do in the country. I've seen businesses get together as an organization and say, it would be really great if we knew what a good benchmark was for our industry. And all the companies, while they're competitors, they all wanted that information as well. So they used a third party and they would send information in, and that third party would aggregate everybody's information. And they had to do it in a way where you couldn't tell whose information was which specific companies. So a lot of times they just averaged everything together, or they would look at total revenue for the industry or total cost for the industry. But that's been a way I've seen, organizations that don't have a whole lot of competition be able to do it. But other than that, sometimes you can Google it. Sometimes you can find a CFO that's worked in the industry for a while. They're going to have some examples, whether it's, just, a friend, or somebody you meet in another organization. But conferences are a good place. I've been to conferences where I've met with CFOs and say, hey, what's y'all's revenue? Or, what's your cost per unit of production? And they don't mind sharing that type of information, but it can be hard to get by. It's not something where you can just do a Google search and it pops up. But those are places I've got it before when it's been hard to grasp.
Okay. Rosemary Perrine asks, have you found any truisms regarding how certain groups respond to KPI reporting formats? CFOs love Excel, but maybe other groups are more visual and need graphs, charts, infographics.
Yes, I have. I had one business owner I worked for that hated graphs. Like, he would like to see a table and I'm an accountant. I love spreadsheets. I can read tables all day, but he would rather see a table that would make my head spin than me put something in a graph for him. So that's a great question. I'll go to this. Well, let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to find, here's one that has less tables and spreadsheets, and it's for a CEO, but that's a great question. You do have to tailor it to your audience, right? I will say this, and I talked about this a little. I had a graph on there I was describing as pretty busy. My sales folks understand that 100%, and they're in business development and sales and marketing. If it's something you're going to show on a regular basis, it doesn't take too long for people to understand it. And especially if it's tied to their compensation or their commission or their annual increase. If you have a way of making, the goal, if you can tie your goals to their goals, that I've found that people can learn to read anything. Like, if if you find out what's important to them, whether it's compensation or just job enjoyment. But the key is that constant measurement. I mean, it may take them 6 weeks of looking at the same graph before they finally go, oh, I understand it now. But if you're consistent with it, you can get some pretty complex information across to all people. And that's what I've found.
Okay. Susan Griffin asked, a little off topic, but relevant to your company. How does a company discern whether they need an accounting manager versus a fractional CFO?
Oh, that's a good question. So we've had a couple of forums recently where I was talking about this, and that seems to always come up in the forum. If you've got a seasoned CFO person that you can talk to, ask them. Like it's kind of size of companies. For example, I had a sales meeting a couple months ago it was a $50 million business, and they had 2 staff accountants. And they were like, we just don't have the financial visibility we want. We're thinking about using a controller a day a week from you. And I said, I can tell you right now, that's not enough. You're a $50 million company. You need a full-time controller. And I can give you somebody, but I guarantee you after a couple of months, you're going to go out and hire. And that's kind of what happened. If you've got somebody you can reach out to, or, another business owner in similar space and ask what they're using. The great thing, and I don't want to make it a sales pitch for Now CFO, the great thing about using a fractional resource for anything is it's a good way to try it out. Whether it's finance, IT, marketing, and your bill from that organization is going to be the best indicator of if you need to bring it in-house. Because if you're using a fractional resource, you're paying a little bit more per hour than you would if you'd hired somebody. But that's a great way to start trying it out and see. If you just go out and hire a full-time person, then you're stuck with a full-time person. You have to find something for them to do. You're stuck with that salary. If you use an outsourced resource, you may use them for 3 months and then decide, oh, I do need to bring this in-house. I do need a full-time person. But at that point, you've got the whole field with the fractional person for whatever it is, and they can help you with the transition. And you've got that position filled for now. You're probably paying a little too much for it, but that's in a better spot than not having anybody or making a hire that you didn't really need. So if you're in doubt, talk with the fractional resource, like I said, whatever industry it's in, and let, if they're good, and they'll tell you up front, yeah, like we're not going to be a good solution. You need somebody full time, or yeah, we can try it out. Maybe 2 or 3 days a week is all you need. And like I said, if that's the wrong answer, it's a lot easier to transition from that fractional resource to the full time than to try to work it backwards the other way.
So Eric Jackson's asking if you can dive back into the NAM metrics. He wants metrics for business development. He may unmute. He may have a more specific question. Okay,
yeah, happy to. Wish I'd had a live version of this because I can break down into that. So let's see, high level, it's activity, right? So I want to know how many meetings they're having. If they meet with a networking partner or a referral partner, they get a point for that. If they have a sales meeting, they get 5 points. If they give a lead to somebody else, they get a point for that. So it helps encourage them to, the whole concept of reciprocity. If we close a deal, they get, I think it's 8 points. If we start an engagement, they get points for that. So it's everything that leads to, a revenue producing item. And the great thing about it is it measures that activity that really, isn't directly related to sales. So isn't a sales meeting. So if they go to a networking event that's sponsored by an organization, or we host our own event where we bring in prospects or networking partners, they get points for that. So, if it's a week where we didn't close any deals, I can look and say, all right, you didn't close any deals, but you were meeting with all the people that are going to refer us business to help make sure that we're going to have that. And it's a great indicator for us. If I look at one of my business development person's NAM and it goes down over a period of time, then more likely than not, the closed deals they have, over the next month to 6 weeks are going to be low as well. So hopefully that helps. I mean, you're welcome to unmute and ask more specifics.
I can, in kind of, the way we do it, I've been fortunate enough, we kind of have a ramp up period for folks and they kind of have a quota each month. And then as they get more seasoned, we're expecting, 80 NAM per week. And like Eric said, they're based, different ones have different value, whether one-on-ones, networking meetings, obviously sales meetings. We do a lot of whiteboarding sessions where we kind of like this that we look at. So, it's kind of keeping people accountable, but obviously your activity is going to generate those sales. So, obviously ours is a lot of times ours is more of a longer sale because we want to network. So we want it to be a two-way street where we get back and forth. So, but it just keeps you accountable through our CRM and that way we can, report to our leaders and they can understand, what's going on and why you're successful or, why you're struggling.
Good deal. So it is a little past 9:45. It's time for us to go to our breakout room. Samira, I think is going to direct us.
Yep, I will stick you right in there right now, and we'll probably just take about 10, 12 minutes and come right back.